Donald Trump and the media. Now, talk about a love affair that's heading south fast. The Republican presidential candidate has given U.S. television networks some of their highest viewer ratings numbers in history. Cable television outlets in particular were facing abysmal viewer numbers just 2 years ago. Now, that changed dramatically with Trump. But now the sweet is becoming oh so bitter. Trump is lashing out at the media, accusing news outlets of working with the Hillary Clinton campaign to rig the election in November. Take a listen.
The election is being rigged by corrupt media pushing false allegations and outright lies in an effort to elect Hillary Clinton president. But we are going to stop it. We are not going to back down. False stories, all made up, lies, lies. No witnesses, no nothing, all big lies. It's a rigged system, and they take these lies and they put them on front pages. This is a rigged system, folks, but we're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let it happen.
All right, Donald Trump has been talking and he's been tweeting. Let's take a look at some of the tweets coming from his official Twitter account. In one tweet, he accuses the media of conducting a smear campaign against him. Then he argues the new polls are good because the media has deceived the public by putting women front and center with made-up stories and lies, and it got caught. Next up, alleged voter fraud in the elections. Trump, this time, writing, of course there is large-scale voter fraud happening on and before Election Day. Why do Republican leaders deny what is going on? So naive. Finally, and rather predictably, Trump took another jab at his presidential opponent, Hillary Clinton. The Democrats have a corrupt political machine pushing crooked Hillary Clinton. We have Paul Ryan, always fighting the Republican nominee. All right, let's go to Washington, D.C. now and get the take from there. I'm joined now by Margaret Sullivan. She is the media columnist from the Washington Post. Good afternoon to you, Margaret. It's good to have you on the day. You just wrote a piece on the unprecedented move by the Committee to Protect Journalists. And they call Trump a threat to a free press. Now, when we think of CPJ's warnings, we usually think of journalists in Russia, China, or Turkey. Is Donald Trump, are they saying that he's a threat to the safety of reporters in the U.S.?
I don't think that the idea is that he's a physical threat, although I will say that reporters who are attending his rallies and speeches have been certainly been criticized and abused by the crowds there. But really what this committee, Free Press organization, was doing is pointing out that if he were elected president, he would be a threat to press freedom in the United States, and that in turn would have implications for press freedom all over the world. So it's not about a physical threat. It's about what he says he would do to libel laws and what he's, his deep hatred, really, I think, that's being expressed toward the press.
Yeah, and
very worrisome.
Is this, Margaret, is this a global story? Is this a warning to all nations with a free press?
Well, the organization that made this move said that, they hold up the United States as a beacon of free speech. And if that is impaired here, it does have global implications, and that's why they felt they had to make a strong statement that said that he is a threat.
I'd like to show our viewers a quote from one of your columns. Let's see if we can't pull that up. And the quote says, "With public trust in the media at an abysmal low, it's time, long past time, for TV news outlets to stop playing the stooge for Trump. The paradox, of course, is that Trump expresses nothing but contempt for the very people in the media who have made his candidacy viable. Even if the turning point comes far too late, when billions of dollars of free media has promoted a candidacy like never before, it must come now." Now, Margaret, you wrote that back in September. We're still waiting for that turning point, aren't we?
Well, I think the press has gotten much tougher on Trump, and really you're seeing his reaction to that in his, very strong criticism of what he calls the media, which is a very broad brush term. Right. But what happened early in the campaign, particularly during the primary, was that, commercial cable TV stations, which benefited from the ratings that came with showing Trump all the time, gave him a great deal of free publicity, $2 billion worth by some estimations. Now that tide has turned somewhat, and he's protesting. It's a difficult adjustment to make, apparently.
A difficult adjustment, and even if he's looking forward, there are new reports out just today about his son-in-law talking to potential investors about founding Trump TV. What do you make of that?
I think it's a possibility. I've written about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. He certainly has deep connections to some of the very conservative media right now. He has his campaign manager, his campaign chairman, is the chairman actually of Breitbart News, which is a far right. I guess you could call it a news outlet. That might be a bit of a stretch. His name is Steve Bannon, and Trump has connections to Roger Ailes of Fox News and strong connections to some of the people at Fox. I think it's not beyond the bounds of belief that should he lose, which seems likely at this point, that he will take the campaign and turn it into some kind of a media organization. Exactly what form that would take, I don't know.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder what the people over at Fox are thinking about that as well when they hear these reports. You've also been critical of why it took NBC, the network NBC, so long to report on that audio and videotape with Trump bragging about being able to grope women. And let's pull up a quote from something you wrote there. You wrote, "If a corporate barrier between news and entertainment is keeping NBC's journalists..." Are we going to get that up? Okay, we're pulling this up. There we go. So, if a corporate barrier between news and entertainment is keeping NBC's journalists from digging into newsworthy material, it shouldn't be there. In fact, it should have been torn down months ago. I mean, Margaret, isn't that the core of the crisis of TV news and journalism in the U.S.? NBC is in the entertainment and the news business, and both divisions are expected to flourish, but they have to obey separate rules. I mean, that expectation is almost naive. It retired with Walter Cronkite, didn't it? Or it should have.
Well, in this particular case, NBC had in its possession this video that has really rocked the campaign and really changed it. And, they had it. The entertainment side knew about it for a while. Because their co-host was a party to it. Even once the news side got a hold of it, it took them several days to get it on air. And what happened in the meantime was that the Washington Post, my newspaper, got a tip about it and got the tip at 11 o'clock in the morning. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the story was published with the video. NBC still hadn't published it at that point, even though they'd had lawyers' clearance. So that's all a little complicated, but I think the point is that this conflict between news and entertainment kept them from airing it as quickly as they should have. I mean, it was obviously very newsworthy. Yeah, I mean, that was obvious. You've been also critical of the boss at CNN, Jeff Zucker, for helping Trump in his rise to political prominence. Why not, some could argue, why not criticize the fact that a former head of entertainment at a network can then become head of a global news network? I mean, outside of the United States, when you look at that, it seems ludicrous. In the United States, it's completely acceptable. Well, Zucker rose from being the head of entertainment at NBC to being the head of NBC overall. So, as you say, it includes both entertainment and news. And it was from there that he moved to become the president or CEO of CNN. So he actually had moved out of entertainment. But the thread that connects all of this is Donald Trump, because every place Jeff Zucker went, Donald Trump was helping him drive high ratings and do well in terms of profits. So, he certainly knew that Trump was, as he describes himself, a ratings machine. And he took advantage of that. And whether that benefits the citizenry and the public, I'd say probably not.
That's the question. I mean, outside the country, when people are looking at what's going on, the conversations we hear time and time again is that editors, news leaders, they should put the welfare of the public, the welfare of their viewers, before profit. And are people outside the U.S., are they being naive if they place those expectations on media leaders in the U.S.?
Not at all. I mean, I'm an absolute true believer in the value of good journalism, and I'm very proud that a couple of the places I've worked, the Washington Post now and the New York Times before that, have broken some of the most important stories in this campaign about Donald Trump's taxes, about this video, about the Clinton Foundation, not just about Trump, but about Clinton. And I think they're doing a very good job, and I am proud to be associated with both of them. I think the cable news networks have done a less good job, and I think that's where a lot of the trouble has come.
And is part of the problem not necessarily with the journalist, with the media, but with the consumers? You've written about this, a lot of people have written about this, that what the consumers want, the news diet in the United States, is simply no longer conducive to a well-functioning democracy. So what's the solution there? I mean, if you do, and you and your colleagues in the U.S., if you're putting out great journalism, what difference does it make if you don't have consumers to take it, use it, analyze it, and make good decisions on Election Day?
Well, I do think that consumers are finding this information, and that it has made a difference. I mean, the Trump campaign has suffered from these revelations, and I don't think that's because there are editors sitting in their offices at these newspapers saying, let's go get Trump and hurt the campaign. They're going after the stories that matter. They are getting out there, and even though there's people pushing back against them, they certainly are affecting people's points of view. So I don't agree that these stories are being printed or published in vain. I do think they're being seen and understood, and that they're having an effect. And I'm very, very proud of that journalism. I mean, I'm not doing it myself, but I'm proud to be at a place that's doing that kind of thing.
Do you think that the U.S. will ever see a rise of publicly funded news with public respect and loyalty, as is the case here in Europe? I mean, can PBS ever be loved like the BBC?
I think that moment in history may have come and gone. PBS does great work, but they don't have the kind of funding that would really help them do, overcome what's happening in commercial media. So I think what you do is great, and the BBC as well, and it would be wonderful if we had more publicly funded media in this country, but I don't think that's going to turn around anytime soon, and it's too bad.
All right, Margaret Sullivan, media columnist with the Washington Post. Margaret, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us on the day. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we're almost finished with the day. Don't forget, you can always join the conversation on Twitter. Write to me at Brent Goff TV, and don't forget to use the hashtag #TheDay, whatever happens between now and then. Remember, tomorrow is another day. We'll see you then, everybody.